Yeah, yeah. Screenshots. Where are those? เ
with pepper paper.
No, però mi chiede. Se no, io non davo.
I want to stay with more of like a traditional overnight flight.
Quindi aspetta, io devo prendere in 3.000 euro.